We got a lot of things to hand out, just to keep you guys informed and hopefully help you guys out. Like we have a template for you guys to look at if you so desire, and then I'll let you introduce your materials in a second. But the first thing we're going to pass out is this non-disclosure agreement. I'm going to pass this out. Basically, just if you guys, once you guys sign this, it just says that you can't steal anyone else's ideas and no one's going to steal your ideas. So during this workshop, we'll probably be talking about our ideas a lot and how we can, start with marketing for our project. So this is just to keep your guys' ideas safe from other competitors. You can't listen to Alex's idea and be like, ooh, that's a good idea, I'm going to steal that. So just if you guys could sign those before the end of the night, that'd be great. And then this is just to keep you guys updated. I emailed this to you guys as well, but it's just our calendar of events. So our next workshop is exactly a month from now. That'll be on finance, and then our presentation workshop is on the 20th. And then the Bring It All Together workshop is kind of just a last-minute Q&A workshop for you guys to ask questions about how the competition works, competition day. 29th is going to be our mixer, where you guys can meet with other business professionals. You guys can kind of informally talk about your idea and kind of get ready for the next day where you present on the 30th. So this is just a little list of the events coming up. And then the outline, if you guys didn't bring that, or if you didn't get that in an email, feel free to take one of those. And then also a template. So the outline that Jeremy's passing around right now is just a brief outline of the beginning, just kind of forming your document, and then getting all the marketing materials down, and then the financials and whatnot will come later. And then lastly is the template. So if you guys want to take a look at a template, I'm just going to leave this up here for now, so you guys can come get this at the end if you want to look at it, just so it doesn't kind of distract from the night. But basically this is a template from a team a couple years ago that has been modified. And so the whole plan, sparring the sources, is only like 8 pages. So that's, if you follow this kind of to use as a guide and say like, oh, how can I pull from this? You're not going to have to spend more than 8 pages on the plan, which is good. And that includes like the table of contents and the introduction and meet the team thing. So I'll leave this up here for now, and you guys can, or I'll take this to the back. If you guys want to have one of these, just come and grab one at the end. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Ponzi. Let's give him a warm welcome.
So first of all, my name is Angelo. Not many folks call me Mr. Ponzi. And yes, you've all been thinking, when you hear my name Ponzi, right? All raises red, you know about Mr. Made Up. However, has anybody actually researched the Ponzi scheme? So if you haven't, there's actually a guy named Charles Ponzi who invented it back in the 1900s. He was a crook, spent a lot of time in jail, not a relative. Matter of fact, one of my sons has a URL says, not that Ponzi, and the other one has the other Ponzi as his URL. However, the name, the Ponzi Group actually means something to me because, and I'll talk about this, it's actually a company I sold about 15 years ago. And I was on GoDaddy last fall and just buying URLs for one of my clients, and out of a whim I typed it in and it was available. So I bought it. And then I started thinking about it, and well, hey, that brought me buck last time, why not transfer? Of course, Madoff came in between all that, so they kind of messed things up, but it's okay. So let me, got plenty of these things. Just kind of pass these around if you don't mind. I'll let you guys pass them. These are a couple of tools that I'm going to talk about, plenty of them throughout the program today. Now, I appreciate y'all coming here. I'm told we have an hour. I am flexible, so if you don't get your questions answered you want to ask afterwards, I'm happy to do it. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you today. I tend to tell stories, but I want to make this your time. If you have burning questions and issues as we're going through this, feel free to interrupt me. All right? Is everybody in here as a marketing major or business major? Okay. So as you get on in life and you stand up on my side of the fence.
Well, I was just going to say, not everyone necessarily has to be a business major. Probably a majority are, but okay. For the competition, you don't have to be a business major to compete. Okay. So yeah, that's just kind of, I don't know exactly what your guys' majors are, but that's just kind of the right. For you.
The point being, you have to get used to interruptions. So I took the outline that Josh gave me as far as your template. So I tried to craft from a marketing standpoint things that I think would be important to go in there for you to pay attention to. So I use this slide a lot. It's planning for business growth. It really is about business growth. You want to launch a business, but ultimately you got to make that business grow. So I say the planning part of it's easy. What you're doing now is easy. After that, if you happen to get your money or get funded or whatever you move forward, that's when it gets really hard. Right? In making it happen, and that implementation is really the important part. Now, for me, I've got a couple kind of throwaway slides here, but I think they want to make a point. That developing a business plan is essential to your growth. You got to get you on the road, and it keeps you on the road. Planning is essential. I just gave presentations for the last month, 5 of them, to CEOs. And I did an assessment with them, and one of the questions was, how much time do you spend every month working on your business versus in your business? You guys know what the difference is, right? The average time that these CEOs spent on their business, doing their planning and their business strategies, was 3 hours a month. That's nothing. So what they found, though, when we did the rest of the assessment, they had a lot of areas they were really not fulfilling because they really weren't paying attention to the business. Why? Because they were worrying about the next sale, they're worrying about the employee that just quit, and those kinds of things. And one of those matrices, we'll talk about that and how people can get distracted and how you can be effective versus ineffective because you're, I call it chasing shiny pennies. The road also to growth is not very easy. I started my first business when I was 23 years old. It was in the film industry. It was called the Film Cannery, and I had this brilliant idea that I was going to bring Hollywood to Orange County. And my partners were 45 and 50 at the time, and they convinced me they really had it wired. Man, not so much. However, for the first 6 months, I was working about 7, 8 days a month, making more money than I'd ever seen, but the business went like this, and it went like that, all in 8 months. We had no real plan. We were flying by the seat of our pants. Why? Because I thought, hey, we just do it. Of course, the people are going to use us. We're great. We're wonderful. So that was my first real lesson. The money I spent during that 8 months was all I had, and probably the best investment I ever made from an educational standpoint because I learned. My next business came 7 years later. That lasted for 13 years, and that's the one I sold. When you launch your business, there is a lot of obstacles as you try to start to grow. You got competitive challenges, you got problems, you got crises, you got taxes, you got competition. All these things are going to have an influence. Can you guys see this screen, or do I need to turn the lights down?
Right.
Because I see it clear. Okay. So again, a lot of stuff that can happen. 90% of business leaders claim their companies fail to reach their strategic goal due to poor implementation. And that's really paying attention, working on your business and understanding. The numbers and the information you're going to gather to put into your business plan is not just stuff you can make up. When you stand up in front of a potential investor or your judges in that competition, I would only can imagine you're going to be challenged. Where'd they come from? How'd you get them? How did you get there? How did you do your projections? I just finished for a 3-year strategic plan for a company that was 30 years old. They never had a plan, ever. They just started growing and growing and growing, and most of their business came through retention. And for the last 3 years, they were flat. And so one of my jobs was to work with them to help define how they could continue to really grow their business by working on retention and making sure the implementation of their programs is strong. So you've really got to keep an eye on I call it the pulse of the market. It's so important that you're always constantly watching what's going on. Now a little bit about me. I am currently, my role is as a fractional chief marketing officer. So I work with a variety of companies in that C-suite level. I do get tactical. I call it get my hands dirty if necessary. But this is where I primarily reside. I've been on the agency side of the business. I've kind of cut my teeth at an agency called Bozell, which at the time was like the 16th largest agency in the world. I've worked at regional agencies. I've been client side as an international product manager, an advertising manager, director of marketing, VP of marketing, a CMO, and a CSO, which is a chief strategy officer. I've worked with everything from semiconductors to ice cream. So I've been on both sides of the fence, which I think helps me here at being more, camera can't see it?
Nope. Yeah, it's too dark.
You know, helps me when I talk to clients because I can come at things with different perspectives. I also have a strong market research background. So I play in this area called Insights, Brand, and Plan. And Insights for me is about getting the voice of the customer. We're going to spend some time talking about that. It's so essential. That assessment I was telling you about I gave to the CEOs, the one they rated the lowest on, across the board, 37 CEOs, was getting the voice of the customer involved in their strategic decisions. To me, that's just mind-boggling. And I wish I could say it was only those 37, but it's not. It's very consistent. This 30-year-old company I was talking about had never done a survey with their customers, ever. They were relying on stuff the salespeople told them, and of course they're going to come back and tell them great stuff, but it doesn't always work that way. So you have to have your fingers on the pulse, what's going on with your customers, because they're going to define, they basically are so important to you. Without customers, you have no business, right? You just have a big idea. These are just a few of the clients that I've worked on that you may know. From Kettle One Vodka, I worked a lot in the alcoholic beverage industry. That was actually a lot of fun. Disney, Secret Vodka, Cabo Wabo Tequila, which is not up there. That was one of my favorite assignments. They paid me to drink. It was really fun. And a wide variety of software, Etnies. I spent 13 years in the action sports industry. And I became the provider of industry statistics and then strategic counseling. And that was an interesting, I spent 8 years with PacSun doing research for them as a consultant. And I remember one day I was standing in a meeting and Bob Hurley and Bob McKnight, Quicksilver, and all those guys were in the back behind the glass. And we were all talking and it was, man, we wish there was more information like this in the marketplace. That became my third business. And so I launched this company called Board Track, Board Sports, so Board Track. And that lasted for 13 years as well. And the interesting thing from a strategic standpoint, the board track, which I thought was brilliant, but as soon as I tried to get outside of my niche and get into non-board sports, I ran into a problem with an image and perception that I was not able to do all that. That's all I understood was surf, skate, and snow. So these are just a wide variety. This company here is actually in the educational field. One of my current clients, Primero, is a software client. Surf Tech, you would know if you surf, ERP, so a wide variety of programs. The marketing discipline, the business discipline, I believe you carry anywhere you want to go. So the biggest debate I have with some people, oh, you don't understand my industry. It doesn't really matter to me. I'll learn the industry. You can't teach me what I know from a marketing standpoint. Now, this is a self-plug. I always encourage everybody to do this. This is actually my radio show podcast called The Business Growth Cafe. You can find me here at thebusinessgrowthcafe.com, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify. And the show is about business growth, the areas internally, externally that can impact the growth of your business. So a lot of good information on there, from speaking from sales to marketing to employee health and welfare to mergers and acquisitions, things like that. So a little self-plug there. So when we look at, and I like to talk about road to growth. So when you think about the road to growth, there's a lot of different elements that can impact your growth of your business. Now, if you recognize these, because you're pretty much going to be working on every one of those within your business plan. So they're all integrated. As I was telling somebody one day, if I am wildly successful at what I do in your marketing strategies, I impacted everybody in your company. I impacted sales, I impacted HR, because now we got to hire people. I've impacted operations because we just sold a whole boatload of stuff. Now we got to make sure we can build it or we can buy it and ship it or package it, whatever product service happens to be. So marketing is huge. Now, the sales guy was standing next to me, he'd tell you that sales is more important than marketing, but marketing is so integral in everything within the business. But there's also those external factors. So when you're thinking about your business plan and what's going on, and we'll get into some more details, you can't just think about, you know, here's I'm going to do my marketing, I'm going to run some social ads, I'm going to do digital. That's almost insignificant in the sense of really understanding the numbers and how all these things play. But more importantly, what happens out there about technology. Now I'm going to ask you in a minute about your products and services, but if you're technology and you're building a new software program, and depending on what it's going to do, if you're not factoring in AI at this point in time, you're almost antiquated, right? Because everybody's looking to AI. Most people don't understand it, but everybody's turning to it. There's a book, a man named Patrick Schwarzenegger. It's a tough one. He was on my show, and it's called Anarchy, Inc., and it's a lot about AI and the impact it's going to have on the job market. Politics, competition, the economy. I was making a presentation, talking on this very slide, and somebody walked in and said, man, oh man, they just raised interest rates. And I turned to the audience and I said, what just happened? And somebody said, well, it impacted my ability to borrow money. That's exactly right. It just had an impact on everything that's going on. So you have to look externally and internally. So when you're developing your business plans, you just can't sit there and say, okay, I'm gonna make shoes, and I'm gonna sell a bunch of shoes through retail. I'm gonna sell online. How many shoes? How many pair do you need to make? How are you gonna make those shoes? What's your cost gonna be? You're gonna make them offshore. You're gonna make them onshore. Who are you competitive against? You're gonna be to the endemic action sports kid, the skateboarder, or are you going to go after the broader market? So those are all questions that you're going to be asking yourself when you think about how you're going to put your plan together and make your presentation so you have your stuff in mind. I'm sure everybody's watched Shark Tank, right? What do they say? Do you know your numbers? And it is so true. You can't sit there and guess. Again, this client I was working on, this salespeople would come in and they'd say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 10 million this year. How? Well, you know, we just added 10% onto what we did. That's not an answer. Why don't you add 20% onto what you did? Let's dig down and really understand where those are coming from. How do you get that? So you sell through retention. What's your close rate? Well, it turned out to be their close rate was 30%. Well, if they wanted to do $10 million, and their close rate was 30%, then they needed whatever, $30–40 million in proposals in order to get, you know, their 10 million, whatever the number happens to be. So these all become important factors. Politics is crazy right now. If your plan and your product and service is to import something out of China, boom, you've got an issue. These are things you have to. What happened when PacSun? I'll tell you a story. I remember when crates of or truck. Crates were sitting offshore because they couldn't come on because the Longman Shore in Long Beach went on strike. So all of a sudden there was no product in the store. They couldn't fulfill their obligations. So a lot of issues can happen very quickly, and you have to, again, keep an eye on that. I thought this was an interesting, and it says funding, and I didn't list all the other stuff, but basically 565,000 startups are launched each month. So we're not unique when you do it. And so when you think about whatever, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit. I was actually going to do really generic because I didn't know we could actually talk about that stuff, because I figured everybody in the room is in competition. But it's about how do you differentiate yourself from everybody else. And again, action sports, giving a presentation, and we're talking about differentiation, and some young lady says, well, I'm making, I forget what it was, shoes. And I have 17 different colors, and that's my differentiator. Wow, okay. Before I could even open my mouth, somebody over here says, I actually make shoes, and I've got 18 different colors. So she couldn't really own shoes. I mean, the colors of shoes, right? Unless you came up with some proprietary color. So again, what's your strong point of differentiation? That is another document that I handed out, and we'll show you how to go through that. So here's some stats on startup failures. I thought I'd be really cheery and bring that up. So a lot of stuff against your success. My first company out of the chute, boom, 8 months, clean out. It was brilliant, great name. But We had no real plan, and it wasn't even logical. We had really researched it, but we didn't. We went on blind faith. So there's a lot of different things that are going against you. But again, because your plan, you don't have a lot of managerial experience and things like that. So, how can you bring that experience in? But depending on what it is, I don't know if you can bring in outside counselors to put on your in your business plan. Again, so think about that. Walking in and said, "Hey, I'm going to build software," and somebody says, "Well, how much do you have software experience? Are you a coder?" No. I just like to play games. So how are you going to get it done? So part of this then really is about passion. If you can find something you're extremely passionate about, so again, I don't know what you're doing, but if you say, "Hey, this would be a fantastic idea," because I read about it in the book, if you have passion for it, that's going to come through, because trust me, running a business is not easy. One of my sons, when he was a junior in high school, said, his dad was in action sports, "I want to launch a t-shirt company." Great. How are you going to do it? "Well, you're going to do it." And I go, "No, I'm not going to do it. You're going to do it." So 3 of them, the dads got together, became the Bank of Dads, and we got them to write the business plan, put it together, and merchandise it. They did their own designs. They went and got the stuff printed, and they were out in the garage doing inventory, all the things that they had to do to run a business. It lasted about a year because they got sidetracked back to school, they were playing lacrosse, and I don't have time to do that. And so their commitment, their passion, wasn't really there. So again, what makes you really happy? If you're a musician and you love playing music, and you come up with the greatest new fuzz for your guitar, that's something you're passionate about. What I get passionate about, frankly, is being strategic and solving problems. When I really boil down what I do, whether it was action sports or ice cream or anything else, it's about solving a problem. That's what I get excited about and passionate about. So, some simple questions. Who are you selling to? What are you going to say to them? Where will you sell them? In the decision process or journey, will you communicate, and why should they buy from you? You've heard that, who, what, where, when, why. It's used in a lot of different ways. But this is just kind of a simple element to get you thinking, and we're going to go into some more detail. And like I said, I tend to talk a lot, and so I'll be careful. I won't try not to eat up too much time getting off on these tangents. But this is a good reference to go back. Who is my target audience? Why are they going to buy from me versus Josh? Got the same products. All right, so again, keep with that.
What do you think?
Oops, jumped ahead. So this is Mr. Cuban. And I've been using this video in some of these CEO presentations. And he's just got 5 points that he makes that I think are just really smart. So,
What do you think, what tips can you give the audience, like, to be successful? Some of these kind of core.
There's some real rules, right? First of all, you got to do it, right? Everybody's got ideas, but you've got to take that step. Like, you've thought about this show for a long time, but it's hard to take that step. In my case, I had to get fired in order to force myself to get there. Second, sales cures all, right? There's never been a company to exist that didn't have revenue. And so when you're getting started, the first thing to focus on is not raising money. That's the biggest mistake people make. 99.99% of businesses don't have to raise money, but you have to have customers. And so what I always suggest is whatever your service is, if you're mowing yards, if you're building widgets, whatever it is, go find customers. Because if you can find somebody who really likes what you're doing, they're going to want the product, they'll support you. The third thing is, you've got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? And then the fourth thing is, what's your core competency? What are you good at? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen. And then probably the fifth thing is, your customers own you. You don't own your business, your customers do. When your customers say jump, you don't just say how high, you ask for precisely the height, because they have to make the choice. And just everybody individually, the choices you make as a customer for different products and services, and use that as your guideline for what will be important to your customers.
So some really smart words, and So this is what he said. You've got to take the step to do it. I can probably, we can spend an hour talking, tell you about all the people that had all these great ideas and never did anything with them. Right? Unless you take that step, it's never going to happen. Sales cures all. Absolutely. Question I ask people on my radio show, what keeps you up at night when you think about growing your business? And the most consistent answer is pipeline. It's sales. Because sales obviously generates revenue, allows you to fund your business and keep things going. You have competition. I don't care what you're making or selling, whatever your service is. There is a competitor out there, real or perceived. Working with a client right now, and we're constantly debating the founder. I don't have any competition. We gave him a 9-page competitive analysis today, and he says, well, they're not really my competitor. They are in the minds of everybody else in the marketplace. Maybe not you, but out there when people are making considerations about what they're going to buy, they're there. So competitive analysis becomes essential, and not just a one-time deal in your business plan. Surprisingly, like the voice of the customer, that's the other thing that gets overlooked consistently. And I have business cards up here for you. On my personal website, there's an ebook, and it's on establishing a competitive intelligence program. Feel free to go grab that. Your core competence. This is really great. I mean, that's about that passion. What are you good at? And if you're good at it, and you enjoy it, you have a better shot of being successful. Because ultimately, we want to be successful and happy in what we do, not successful and miserable. You know that from the day you graduate to the day you retire, I don't know when the study was done, you'll work 80,000 hours. Right now, the statistics that 85% of American workers are unhappy or disengaged in their job. Right? They're just going through the motions. They're not passionate. And now, because of the low unemployment rate, people are leaving their jobs constantly, which is costing employers a lot of money. Right? So be passionate about what you're doing. Just don't pick an idea out of thin air. Be passionate about what you're doing, because ultimately that could end up being your business. And to a point, customers own your business, absolutely. Without them, point number 2, right? Sales cures all. You have to have customers. You've got to keep them happy. And the other thing is about what is the value that you bring your customer. It's not just price. Price might have been a factor, but ultimately there was a value there, unless you're a true commodity. But there's value. There's so many times once you get the client, people forget about that service aspect of it, and then they lose them because of that. So what is your business? I'm just curious. B2B, B2C, how many people are doing a B2B project? Client. 1? Everybody else B2C?
Do you want to explain what the difference is between
Well,
B2B and
business to
B2C?
business versus business to consumer. So you're selling your product or services to a business versus I'm going to sell, to me, the consumer. So who's selling to the consumer? Okay, the majority of the rest of your B2B. Okay, how many are a service versus a product? Okay, if you do. Okay. Then how many are technology? 3. How many are, what would be apparel? Anybody apparel? Nobody? I'm just curious. Can they tell me if they want? Anybody want to tell me what you're doing? Or do you want to keep it a secret? And I'm okay with that.
We're gonna. So like McDonald's is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Does a great job, but they're not healthy, and there aren't really any like fast food cheap option healthy places out there. So we're gonna put in like a really fast food, but also very healthy, environmentally friendly, all that stuff too.
Okay. You heard of Grab Green?
Grab Green? No, I haven't heard of it.
Okay. Look them up. Look them up. There's one in Rancho Santa Margarita.
I don't think I want to do it in California. We don't want to start in California.
But anyway, look them up. They're basically a healthy. So you've probably chosen one of the hardest businesses. I owned a franchise for literally 3 months, and I got out of it really fast. It just didn't mix. I had this brilliant strategy once again. I was going to run my marketing departments, and I was going to work in the back office of the green burrito is what I bought. And after 3 months, I was like, there's like no way I could do this every day. So we can talk offline. You're going to try to think about franchising and stuff like that. That's kind of your long-range business plan. There's a lot of things you want to think about before you do that. So, good. Tough one, though. It's good. You gotta really be involved. You gotta be passionate and involved. The biggest mistakes when people in their business and the operators just run it into the ground. Right? We used to jokingly say at Coldstone, one of the problems with Coldstone is you're hiring 18-year-old kids to run your business. Because the operator would leave. He's like, you go to an ice cream store like these places, it's just students. Right? So you've got to be engaged in your business. Anybody else?
We were gonna make a basically application for maintenance program. So it's like the app telling you when you change the oil or when you change the brake lines or something like that.
Okay.
So our program we need to see, and then we want to think how to develop how to reach the customers to download the app.
Okay. All right. I'll give you some stuff in the back end. So I'm assuming you use some kind of predictive analytics to,
Yeah.
and really artificial intelligence, machine learning, and that kind of stuff to predict those kinds of things. So through an association of mine, one of the things we were working on was with Edison, for example. And we were trying to predict when the big transformers, for example, were going to die, so the whole city wouldn't go dark. And so there's that kind of predicting. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think you can even get access to like Watson and a few of those others relatively inexpensive to help you. But that's kind of really a predictive model that you need to develop. I like that. You?
I just have a question.
Sure.
Is apparel one of those ones that a lot of people pick at the beginning, and as a result, there's a lot of competition?
There is a lot of competition, but so part of it is thinking about how are you different. Like with my son, they picked skateboarding, and he ended up picking a name that had some negative connotations, but we all kind of let it ride to see where it went because he changed some letters and stuff. But part of it was, I think they could have actually done something with it, but they just weren't passionate enough. So partly, if you're going to go into a women's line or whether it's action sports or just apparel in general, those kinds of things, again, you have to get out and talk to the customers, potential customers, about what would resonate, not resonate. One of the things I used to do in that marketplace is I travel around the country and do focus groups. And so we were always showing clothes or showing shoes, getting opinions before we even developed them. Because this, the kids were saying, well, I don't like the tongue on that sneaker, it's too fat or whatever it happens to be. We're dealing like with that needs, for example. Well, that would be stupid for them to make, a big fat tongue on their skateboards because their shoes weren't going to go anywhere. So that's one of those industries that's very cool, very competitive. Margins are small, but it's a really fun. I was in it for 13 years, so that was a lot of fun. I loved it. Anybody else want to talk? No? All right. This is your time. I'm just up here talking. Ask me questions.
Well, I guess my idea is doing like a Uber service for like laundry. So from your app, you can, if you're too busy doing homework or you have tests going on or you have work going on, you can have someone come to your location and come do your laundry for you. All these different settings for if you need it perm pressed, and more fabrics, all those different kinds of
like almost a concierge service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
Right. I like that. I would have used that when I was in school. Absolutely. So, so from your standpoint, you got a concept. And so when we talk about voice of the customer, when you do your business plan, if you can bring in some of those, do some videos, whatever it happens to be. But I talk to potential customers. Here's what they say about it. There was are you familiar with applied innovation over at UCI? Like they have like what do you call it, an incubator program over there. So I'm what they call an EIR over at UCI. It's an expert in resident. So I get called in on occasion depending on what's going on. So I got called into this group, and they came up with a subscription model basically to rent shoes. And so you order your shoes, you get your pair of shoes, you wear them however long as you wanted, and then you would return them, and then they would donate it to charity. Great. But their due diligence was nothing but their friends and family. And everybody said it was wonderful. And so when they presented it to me, I started putting it, what potential negatives were, and they just didn't want to listen, because why? They talked to their friends and their mom and their dad, and they were convinced it was great. So, if you do it, don't just talk to your friends, talk to people you don't know, because then you're gonna get real answers. Because what you don't want to do is go, hey, this was great, all my friends loved it. Yeah, okay. So you got 10 friends, maybe you sell 10 apps, and you're done. So, but I like the idea. It's actually pretty cool. Anybody else? All right. So story. We talk about storytelling a lot in marketing. So develop your story, not just facts and figures. So the biggest mistakes that companies make is they tend to talk about themselves too much. Think about your end customer. Great product. Talk about why I want to use it. Hey, Angelo, with my service, you got more time to binge watch Netflix. Whatever. So that's a consumer value point to me, not just saying, hey, we can get your laundry done in an hour. Hey, that's great, but what's it for me? So really think about that when you're putting your story in your 90-second elevator pitch, or your story, whatever, I call it 90-second elevator pitches, right? I always say you have a 10-story building and you're on floor 1 and you're going up. How are you going to tell somebody about what you do without boring them to death? I was talking to a software company a few months ago, and I said to them, well, what's your elevator pitch? Do you have one? They said, well, it's kind of loose. I said, well, is it a 10-story ride or is it the Empire State Building? And they said, the Empire State Building. They said, we get off and we start talking about, the technology and this. And they bore people to death. They bored me at the lunch table. So think about that story. What's going to evoke emotion? If you can grab somebody with emotion, then you captured them. And it becomes harder for a competitor to take them away. If it's all about, hey, I got this great app and it's $19.99, well, I got a great app and it's $19.99, but I'm going to tell you value points. And I love it, and it's fantastic, and I see the value. Well, now he comes in with the same similar app. Well, so why am I going to go to him now? I'm really happy with you. Right? So it's about that emotion. If you can make that emotional connection, it's really strong. So a brand is no longer what we tell customer it is, it's what the customers tell each other it is. Right? There's an old, way before your time, commercials, the shampoo commercials. You tell a friend, they'll tell 2 friends, they'll tell 2 friends, they'll 2 friends. Right? So with technology, if people are happy, they'll tell you. But when they're unhappy, they'll tell everybody. So you have to watch this. You have to make sure that, again, what are the value? If you're promising somebody something, working with a company, and they said, well, here's our customer service. If you have a problem, send us an email. And if you don't hear from us in 24 hours, give us a call. We're like, I'm sorry, what? Doesn't make any sense. Either tell them you call them back in 24 hours. What if we don't get the email? Well, but you just basically said you're not going to hear from us for 24 hours, the way they put it. So that was a poorly crafted customer service response. And the other thing, too, just in frame, if you're thinking about this, customer service versus customer experience. We tend to mix them up, but they are very different. Focus on that experience. What is the experience for your app, even your apparel? What is the experience you want them to have? Same thing with the foods. It's not necessarily just about the food, it's about that experience. Starbucks is coffee. But there's an experience there. That's why we go back there and spend $5 on coffee. Right? We're after that experience. And so think about that when you're looking at your service and things that you're developing. What is that ultimate value and experience you're going to bring to your customer? It's almost like you've heard of Simon Sinek. Anybody? Right? Start with the end in mind. Or your why. What's your why? Covey, start with the end in mind. Right? And think about that. Go out, look, what do you want to happen out there? Whether it's a sales or an experience or whatever, and then work backwards on how are you going to make that happen. On the radio show, there was a lady named Jodan Whitlock, and she's the director of global marketing for UPS. And she talked about using a strategy tree. Now we tend to think about planting a tree and the tree growing. She starts at the top. What do I want to have at the top of my pyramid, my tree? And then I start looking at the layers, the branches, the sub, to get down to the base and the tactics. So it's really interesting the way she talked about it. And I truly believe you have to start out that far. So here we go. Start with the end in mind. I love this picture of this little kid sitting there. He wants to get to the top. He doesn't know how he's going to do it. Right? So think about that first and work your way back. So you have this in front of you, and this isn't a kind of a marketing thing, this is a personal thing. So many people, this is Covey. When you look at these 4 quadrants, is where are you spending your time? So whether you're schoolwork or personal or on your business. There's so many things that are very important and they're urgent and they're distractions, right? There's a crisis going on. There's an emergency meeting, your COO just said, hey, I got to meet with you now. Well, you work on your plan, but now you got to break away. So in life, we try to get everybody over here into the quadrant 2 to spend time. That's your working on your business part. That's where you're going to be more effective. Like there's a lot of distractions. I turn to I call it chasing the shiny penny. I watch my email pop up on my screen and my eyes just automatically go right to it. And now after a while, I just lose my concentration. So now I turn my email off, set my phone for 30 minutes, and whatever I'm working on is 30 minutes straight, and then I allow myself to look. So that keeps me out of being here, and it keeps me out of hopefully running for the necessity part because somebody's knocking on my door and needs something. So again, how can you stay here and be effective, not only in your business planning, but also in life? So we start with the end then. What is the size of the market? You have to understand how big your market is so you understand how much of the slice of it you're going to get. So again, looking at, I'll pick apparel. Well, apparel's huge. So is it girls' leisure clothes? Is it boots? Is it shoes? Is it hats? Is it gloves? So whatever that happens to be, you're in apps. Apps that are called the delivery mechanism. You've got a concept. Are there any other concepts out there that are doing something very similar? Besides your app, you also need people. Right? You need people to go pick up the clothes, right? So like a hub grub or whatever that's got a grub hub. So you need bodies to go get that stuff. And you need people that understand how to wash clothes. So there's a training aspect that goes along with your thing. You just got to say, I'll pick up your stuff. You mix the colors and the whites, and now you got a mess and you got a lawsuit going on. So those are things you have to think through your business. Is how are you going to do that? How are you going to recruit the people to do this job? How are you going to train the people? How are you going to retain the people? So those are just questions I would ask you in your business plan that you need to be ready to answer. So same thing. If you've got, I'll call it an existing market. So again, apparel's existing. There's probably stuff out there that I would call probably competitive. There's a guy in San Diego trying to do exactly what you're doing, but he's not approaching it correctly. He spent all his time, when he came to me, he said, I've been spending all my time trying to get people to sign up for the app. And my point was, you only have one provider. How are people going to go get their car service based on his app when you don't have any providers? You should start with your providers first, build that base, and then it's easier to go get customers. As soon as you get me to sign up as an individual, and I say, where do I go? Then you lost all credibility. Can't deliver on the promise. And the brand promise is really important when you set that to make sure you deliver on it. So, or are you creating a brand new market? Something that doesn't exist. You're going to go into healthy foods. There's some healthy food competitors, but every restaurant, you're competing for share of wallet, right? The share of my dollars. Where am I choosing to spend? And there have been studies on how people rationalize. Okay, let's see. What do I want to do? I want to have Mexican food. Okay, where am I going to go for Mexican? What am I interested in? Oh yeah, well let's go to Taco Bell, the Del Taco. Do I want to go to a sit down? So there's a mental process that people go through in picking a restaurant. But because of the health aspect, you've got a niche of a customer that the meat-eating hamburger guy that goes out for burgers every day, you're probably never going to get him in your store. So you're going to have to define how big your market is. So if this is the restaurant market, or food market, restaurant market, and this is healthy food, then who's playing in that healthy food? And then where's your niche? And then how are you going to get new customers in? How are you going to steal customers from somebody else? And then ultimately, what's your revenue goal and how are you going to get there? So you can't get a revenue goal if you don't know how big the market is. And then where are you playing? If you're creating a category, that's another big challenge. Now you're into educating people. Are you taking on the educational role? You always talk about first to market. I want to be first to market. Well, first to market's great, but you also carry the burden of educating everybody. And so if that's your role in educating people on healthy foods, I'll just use a broad category, then that burden has to show up in your plan. So you have to know where you're going to play as well. So some growth strategies, right? Fewer existing products in the existing market, well, market share, market penetration. If you're existing products and you've got some new products, those product service development, and you can kind of follow on. So new markets and new products, and then that's the diversification strategy. So you're looking at how do I approach those markets in order to be effective? And where can I play? You good still? All right. So these are kind of the pieces when I think about marketing. Competition, your brand, target audience, sales and distribution, other. And I'm not going to talk about other today, and I'll probably end up even streamlining some of these because, like I say, I'm talking a lot. This is your finance, your HR, and those kinds of things that you're getting later on. So when we think about the competition, again, some of these things I've been saying. Revenues, market share, sales and distribution strategies. What's their brand position? What's their perceptions in the marketplace? You know, I think it's called Grab a Green. It's kind of brand new. The area developer is the same guy that does Cold Stone. That's the only reason I heard about it, and then I saw it, and he told me that he did that. So pricing, product service offerings. What's the pain? What pain are you solving for the client, for your customer? You know, your brand messaging and your feature product matrix. So these are just some of the basics that you need to put together to really have an understanding on how you can position your product. If you don't know what they're doing, then anything you do could just be repetitive. Worked on a retirement home. And one of the things we did, they had, I think it was like 15 different competitors, and we analyzed their websites, and we looked for messaging. And one of the things that came out is the messaging across almost all of them was identical. They used the same words, they used the same phrases. And so if you closed your eyes and took their logos off their pages, and somebody read it to you, you'd actually have no idea what the brand was. And so how could we look at that information and do it differently? Conclusion was, since everybody was using the same words and phrases, they were important. I call it the ante, right? Play cards. It's the ante. You have to have those words. The question was, how could we reposition those words and create a position and a phrase that separated us from somebody else? If we hadn't done that homework, we wouldn't have known or how to create the brand strategies and the messaging. Same thing. If they're solving a problem or a pain point with your customer, you need to know what that pain point is and can you do it better? Or maybe more importantly, maybe they're not solving that pain point and you have an opportunity. So this is a quick matrix, a lot of stuff, but this is actually a matrix we did for a software company. And so what we were trying to get at is all the different pieces of information that we glean from websites. There's so much content out there that when I talk about market research, you don't have to, like, well, people that have money, I say you don't have to go spend a lot of money to do market research. There's so much from the content, from the annual reports, from their press releases, that you can gather articles, industry articles, associations, gather that information and make sure you're utilizing that in painting the picture of the market and your competition. Do not go into your presentations with your plans and say, I don't have any competition, because again, you might not think you do, but somebody is competing against you somehow, some way. So, and this went on for like 4 pages. So a lot of detail. Now, I'm not suggesting you stick this in your business plan, but that could be one of your appendix, and you're pulling some of this key information out to paint the picture that I've done my due diligence, that I understand my competition. And that's why I can say all the other things I'm going to say in my business plan. Sorry for all the doodles. New technology on plan. So, talking about your target audience, we talked about pain points. There's decision criteria. How are they making decisions? You know, when we talk about food, there's a process. What do I want to eat today? What do I feel like? Once I pick a category, then I start to make decisions on the restaurant. Knowing that process, right, that decision process that they're making, and how can I be in front of them from the lunchtime, you know, what are your hours, the other side? You know, restaurants cycle. A lot of fast food restaurants live on lunch, they don't live on dinner. A lot of fast casuals live on dinner, or casual restaurants are living on dinner, not on lunches. where your location is going to be. They're going to be sitting in an office area, then it's lunch, because everybody's going to go home at night and you'll have no actual traffic. Right, so all those things, you know, with the restaurant business, they say location, 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 and it's absolutely true. You have to be in a situation where you can hopefully capture lunch and dinner, so you're just not living off this particular day part. And then why would they come in for dinner? You're changing your menu up, or you're giving them something different. You know, and I haven't been in the Grab It and Go, whatever it's called. It's interesting, but you know, why I actually eat healthy, just haven't quite got there yet. But I don't think I'd go back for dinner or only lunch.
We looked at it wasn't a cheap option. I don't think it was cheap. We were looking more for like really cheap, like McDonald's, like $1 menu kind of stuff.
Okay. All right, and so a $1 menu, I would figure out, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to portray that you got quality,
Exactly.
right? Versus $1.
Yeah.
McDonald's can do $1. Why? Because they're doing billions of dollars in sales, and so they can afford to put out a smaller hamburger. They're probably, you know, I don't eat McDonald's, but I'm going to venture to say that the burgers are probably maybe a little bit smaller, a little less meat, maybe a little more filler, right? Because they're getting their cost, their portion size down and their cost down. And portion size, all those things that go along with it. Again, happy to talk to you about the restaurant business. You guys understand, you know what buyer personas are, right? So important to understand who your audience is. Not just, I was talking to somebody and they said, so do you have buyer personas? They said, oh yeah, we got all their job descriptions. I said, what? Job descriptions? That's not a buyer persona. You don't know anything about your customer. So that becomes important. And what are their buying cycle? One of my clients is seasonal. They're a Christmas company, and their big season is Christmas, but they actually sell all year long, but their money doesn't get made until like Q3 and Q4. So they have operational things to think about. They have seasonal hiring that they have to deal with. And so is there a cycle to your business? You know, the thing with oil changes and stuff like that, you know, a lot of new cars now, you buy a new car and they tell you, you know, you don't have to come back for a year. So who are you going to target with your, it's going to be older cars and certain models, right? So you're now gathering that data.
Target customer maybe like they can have home, so that 20 to like 30 years old.
Okay. So have you thought about that? So that's good. So that becomes that vertical market or that segmentation of the market that you're going to go after. And those numbers are available. How many cars, again, might not be very specific about buying the data, but at least you have references of numbers you can use to help paint the picture that you've done your due diligence. And then where and how do they buy? So if you're selling apparel, for example, are you private labeling for people? You're going to sell retail, you're going online. Where's your customer going to be? If they're buying online, one of the early things we saw with Action Sports is kids were going into the stores, trying on clothes, getting the feel for it, then going home and going online and buying it because they could get it cheaper. So the retailers had to compensate for that. And then, you know, can you determine long-term value, right? So it's not a one-off. How do you get me back over and over and over again to your restaurant? You know, what's those incentives? Then you can calculate. So we calculate, for example, the value of a skateboarder was $10,000 over the lifetime of a skateboarder, because it was pretty much 13, 14 to 16. And the reason it ended at 16 because they started driving. Snowboarding started going up, surfing went up, and those prices went up for those sports. The market research, again, I'm not going to go into great depth, but whether it's qualitative or quantitative, I encourage you to do some kind of due diligence. It doesn't have to be expensive. You can, for you do a little quantitative study, you could do a Survey Monkey, they don't really charge, and put together a little questionnaire. And again, get out into the marketplace and try to get opinions outside of your friends and family. And it sounds logical. Believe me, there's businesses and people that are running businesses that sit in the conference room and talk to themselves and think they're solving the problems. They have no idea what their customer even cares about. So again, you would think that it's mind-boggling to me all the time when I hear that kind of stuff. There's a new it's customer first strategy, customer centricity, really thinking about the customer first and working your way back. One of the I found it funny at first, but one of the new trends is actually to have an empty chair in your meetings, and that's the customer. And think about the customer in all your decision making. You know, how would the customer take that? How would the customer buy that? As opposed to, we're going to go out and sell it to them, and we're going to put it online, and they'll buy it. Maybe not. So work backwards, work backwards. And then certainly, again, from qualitative and secondary, there's a lot of stuff.
By competency survey, how can I do a survey or survey monkey? Because I don't have much friends with me, so I want to like survey like 100 people to like get useful data of by using competency survey.
Sure.
How
So,
you can
you,
do-
so survey. Well, you can. I do things just simply. I do post on LinkedIn, Facebook, and you can post. You can boost and buy some ads on Facebook. It's pretty inexpensive. Consumer data actually is relatively inexpensive. You could probably go out and buy a consumer for like $3 to $5 a person. So you might be able to invest. You won't get the numbers you really need, but I call it stick your toes in the water. Go out and talk to 300 consumers, for example. You know, it might cost you $500, but you would get the sample right through SurveyMonkey, for example. You can give them the criteria that you're looking for, and then see if they would give you a cost. And a lot of times they have student programs too, and so you can get discounts on those.
Another thing, like a lot of what he's talking about is primary research. What you guys should definitely take advantage of is secondary research, which I'm sure you're going to get to in a minute. But just going online and researching companies like your own or industries that you're in, and kind of seeing what the market is for that. So I'm sure you're going to say that. Sorry.
Yeah, and I was talking about that earlier. Annual reports, press releases.
And that's
You guys-
all free. You can get that.
It's all free, and
Yeah.
you guys probably have access to the databases here through school, so LexisNexis and all that stuff. Man, that stuff is gold. When my son, as each one of my kids went through school, I always had them give me their passwords. And I would go in, because I mean, that was, if I bought that was thousands of dollars worth of data that I was getting for free. There is a trove of information. There's one I just learned about, it's called, I believe it's called Reference USA. And you get it through the public library. So you basically get to go get a library card. I don't know where there's one here, but like my library, if I go there, I get a library card. If they have Reference USA, I get it for free. And it has all these kinds of databases in it. So there's a lot of free information out there. And so that's where you get from secondary. It's really just digging and finding that information. Now, if you've got a study that you're going to hang your hat on and say, this is the definitive, it defines my product and service, I encourage you to go back and see who the author was, where they got the data, and make sure it wasn't, Bob's really good market research company that was winging it, and his methodology was bad. I've seen that before too, where you're quoting, these people are quoting all the statistics and turn out to be the methodology was just really horrible. Therefore the data was bad. So, but I use that all the time. I constantly gather information. And then again, just qualitative. Just pull 5, 6, 7 people into a room and do a focus group with them. Talk to them about what you're doing. I mean, you're great for that. You could do that easily. You guys could do that real easily. Just sit around. Again, people you don't know. Okay, hey, $5 and pizza. Come hang out for an hour. I want to ask you some questions. Easy. Talking about buyer personas, voice of the customer. Yes, that is pizza dough. I love this picture. Sorry, I had to use it. So understanding, again, getting that input. And so these are things I talk about. What's important? What are their fears, hopes, and dreams? What influences a customer? What do they hope to achieve? So understanding who they are as an individual, not just a job title, because then you can appeal to them. This is a chart I show. The other thing, like in the tech world, we always say that you have to understand the different decision makers within the process. So in this scenario, you've got the IT manager, or the CTO says, hey, I want to put in this new system. The IT manager is the one that evaluates the system, and then the CFO is the one writing the check. If I'm only talking to the IT manager, I'm missing 2 ends of that book. And so I've got 2 people that understand about my company. So if you're in a kind of a technology sell or a multi-person involvement, you have to understand who all the players are and building those personas to make sure you can communicate with them. And part of that too is understanding how they consume information. And I'll show you some slides on that in a second. So if I'm talking to 45 and younger, I mean, I'm hitting videos, I'm doing a lot of videos now. But I was talking to a guy the other day who was 80 years old, and I said video, and he said, do you have a paper book? I like paper. So again, understand how they're consuming information. Just assume that I'm going to put out a video and I'm going to expect that customer to go to YouTube to watch it because they might not understand how to get to YouTube. And then sales distribution strategies. How will you sell? Whether you're going to go direct, whether you're going to hire a rep force. In the apparel industry, they use sales reps all the time, independent sales reps to sell for them. Going to go retail, going to e-commerce. We talked about franchising. Inside sales team, outside sales team, company sales reps, partners, and distributors. So these are all strategies that you need to look at and how you're going to move your product. If you're an app, you're hitting iTunes and those kinds of places. But you still have to market that. So I worked in the mobile app market for about a year and a half. And I thought we had some great products, but we never really got any big traction with them. They were more, one was called on distracted driving. Basically, we shut your phone down so you could talk on your phone while you were driving. Well, incredible. We had insurance companies interested in it, driving schools interested in it. We just couldn't get any traction in the marketplace. We had one called Rescue 911 and a lot of different areas for it. We couldn't sell it. I could give it away really easy, and which we did to try to build awareness for the company. So we had great products, but there was a real startup. They were underfunded. The only money they had was money that they made from sales of apps. And so we never really got kind of the market criteria or credibility that we needed to move forward. So again, understanding how you're going to do all this is important in your business plan, because you have to, if you build it, you do the field of dreams and you build it, hope they will come. Right? You have to figure out a way to put your product into the marketplace. And like with the lady that just left, if you're going to sell retail and you're going to sell it at PacSun, pick on them, how many brands are they carrying? And actually, by the way, about 50 or 60% of the PacSun brands are PacSun brands. They're not outside brands. They're their brands. They're not outside companies. So now you've got 45% or 40% of the retail space that you as an outside company can bring in your apparel. So again, understanding those distribution channels. And maybe you're starting online, and then at what point in time do you make decisions? And then how do you do fulfillment if you're going to actually have to give them a physical product? Now you got packaging, or you're going to ship through Amazon. I just bought something the other day, and their fulfillment company was Amazon. But I bought it through the company. So they set up that kind of program. Well, these are all things you need to think about as you're working on your plan. And the other thing too, and these are journey maps. The one on the left is more B2B, and this one's more B2C. So understand how your customer is moving through their process. In the B2B world, we say right now about 75% of all the research for a product or service is done prior to the customer actually picking up the phone and calling the company. So if you're not online and you're not communicating and making sure that you're delivering the information of interest to them in their funnel, if you will, or on their journey, then you're missing the boat. So same kind of things. So with you, for example, one of the things we used to look at in the industry was how do I get people. Cold Stone's a great example. Cold Stone sells ice cream. Not much breakfast opportunities for ice cream. And trust me, you don't want to eat ice cream for breakfast because it really is miserable. But so at lunchtime, but it's dessert, right? It's not lunch per se. And so we always looked at how can we introduce other products and services. At one point in time, they were talking about putting soup in the store. It was ridiculous. But they were trying to figure out how do I get somebody in for lunch. And so they were scrambling. So they had very limited opportunities for sale. Hot days, we dealt with rainy days. What happens when it rains? Nobody's going outside to eat ice cream. But we had programs that would do that to get people to come in. So again, understanding what can happen, back to that very first slide. What are the market dynamics that can happen that can have that kind of business? And this becomes really important to understand. There's tons of tools out there. Just again, another sidetrack. But as far as personalization now, with a lot of with independents, I'm talking to this company out of Israel right now, they've got a personalization engine that'll actually analyze my website and determine based on the pages my customers come on and the content on there, it'll start serving up other content. Those things are running around $300,000 or $400,000, and this company out of Israel is trying to break into the U.S. market, and their entry price is $500. And it's like, wow, unbelievable. Another client of mine is using a product that they can track IPs and identify the company that's visiting their website. Then they take that, they go into their database, and they see if this person's been there before or not. If they have, they elevate it. If they don't, they wait to see the next time they come back, and there's a whole process. So technology has changed. It can really help you identify who those customers are and those opportunities. Because somebody goes to your website and you're not capturing that information, it's lost opportunities. So all the things you want to do to try to get them to capture. So if you look at discovery, interest, and consideration real quick, so when might you use these? So if there's blogs and webinars and conferences and advertising and outbound sales and websites in that discovery process, right? Then you get interested, and now you're adding maybe some videos and some digital ads and some landing pages and things like that to try to capture that information. If you're doing promotions, we always encourage our clients to do landing pages and not send them back to the website. So we can serve them up very specific information on that landing page, and more importantly, can also capture that information. Otherwise, we don't know who they are. It's all lost opportunities. And then certainly when the consideration set, and then maybe now you're making that sales call, or you're doing demos and testimonials and stuff like that. So these are the journey maps. There's another one using a funnel. What kind of tactical things might you use as your client or prospect is going through the funnel? There's a group out there called ClickFunnels. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they actually have a great kind of packaged funnel with all sorts of tools with it, which is really cool. But these are how you might use these different tools, and whether it's content is king, is what we say right now. You got to have content in order to get recognized by Google, to be able to serve up information. But again, what is that content? How do you lose somebody if they read your blog? Why are they going to come back again? What else are you going to give them? What are the videos? How long will they watch a video? Those kinds of things. And what are they really interested in? If I'm in the discovery process and trying to understand what your app is, I'm in a different mindset than if I'm down here trying to make a decision whether I want to purchase it. So making sure that you're talking to them at the right time and what they're based on their interest levels. And there's so much from a tactical standpoint. We've been talking about a strategy. Now we're down to, what do we do and what are the tactical things that you do? You have to think this stuff out. Social media, we always talk, clients are sitting there and say, yeah, I want to be on Facebook. Why? Well, if I have to, I want to do posts. What are we going to do with your posts? Well, I just want to, let people know I'm here. Well, how about, I want some likes. You don't want likes, you want engagement. You want to have somebody that's communicating back and forth. You want to try to drive someone to make a decision to click that ad to go to your website and get more information. So always think about, what do you want to happen? What's the call to action that you want? Not just come on Facebook. Come on, I have people on Facebook all the time, and I'll look at what's happening on there, and virtually no engagement. I worked for Purina a few years ago as a client, and it was a social media project, and it was about engagement. And so we analyzed their feeds. Probably 70% of the posts for Purina was Purina. And then we have, consumers. But there was no physical engagement. They were just, I saw it, I liked it, and just kept moving. Nobody actually commented, nobody talked about, hey, this was great, I'm glad I saw this, and hey, thanks, Mary, for doing that kind of stuff, right? So you want engagement if you're going to use social media. You want to give them something else. Have them click. Everything we do now, if we use a visual, and when they click on that, they go someplace else to get more information. So now I've got them captured. Now they're on this landing page that's delivering them whatever it happens to be. Email. Email is not dead. If you've read that it's dead, it is not dead. Email is still a very powerful tool. And so as you build your database and you capture everything you do, whether it's food or apps, or whatever you guys are doing, you always want to try to continue to build that list. Give people opportunities to sign up for more information. Website is essential. And it can't just be a catalog. It needs to be interactive. So lots of different things going on, retargeting, digital, blah, blah, blah. We're getting close?
Yes, sir.
I'm running out, huh? So I'm gonna do, this is a slide that I found and people find it amazing. So in sales, I used to have a rule of thumb. If they don't call me back or I can't get a hold of them in 4 tries, I'm done. That's what I don't care. Well, then I see this, I was like, whoa, I was giving up way too early. So I've been using this with a lot of my clients to say, your salespeople have to put together a program and recognize it might take a while based on whatever you're selling to actually get people to respond. So you can kind of see it. If you're, get the number 4, 89% of the people are giving up. That was me. And those that kept going were probably rewarded. So again, you've got to have a nurturing program. HubSpot has a free CRM program that you can download on your computer. You can use it for emailing. You can use it to track your clients and stuff like that. So again, great tool. Doesn't cost anything. I actually just downloaded it yesterday. And so you want to look at ways to make sure you're managing things. Again, and I'm talking to you as if you're doing this, but these are things you want to have. You want to make sure that when you're putting your plan together, you've thought about all the different aspects beyond just the service of the product. Where are you going to get your food from? Are you going to buy it from Cisco? Where are you going to source it? Is it going to be from your own sustainable farms? Those are all interesting conversations, right? Farm to table. You say farm to table, I want to buy through Cisco. Okay, but maybe you're buying, if you're here in Orange County, maybe you're buying from the local farms in the Inland Empire or something, I don't know. So think about all that stuff, because those are going to get questions that you're going to get asked. What's that cost me? Those are easy, simple conversations. And hey, I'm a student, I've got a question. Works wonders. I used that probably into my 30s. Come on, that was a joke. Not really. And then your brand itself. What are the needs, wants, and motivations for people who are going to buy your brand? I'm sorry, I probably got way more slides than you hoped for tonight, but hopefully you're finding some of this interesting. Leverageable, sustainable, and ownable is one of the ones I always talk about. You have to have something you can help differentiate yourself, because all this other stuff is going to come along with it. So I'm going to skip this. So this is the framework I do want to leave you with. So this is the framework I gave you. And basically, the instructions are on it. And what it is, it's about finding something that you feel in your product or service, your company, that's of value. Right? It helps differentiate you. And if you think it's of value, you put a yes. Is it rare? Is it something your competitors do not have? Then again, yes or no. Is it costly to imitate? And then, as the organization going to support it. So these are important, because if you get yeses all the way across, then you've got something to potentially differentiate you from the competition. But if you got a lot of no's, like one of my favorite was a client, because yeah, our employees help differentiate us. How? These are factory workers. We got factory workers. How do they differentiate? Oh, they're really good and really loyal. I can't really differentiate on that. Right? So it's just a simple tool to help you think it's a front and back. And then if you want to grab a picture of this slide, I didn't actually give you this one. This kind of tells you how to read that chart once you figure it out.
Is it okay if I send the PowerPoint to everyone? So if you send me a copy of that, is it okay if I send it out to the students?
Yeah, I'll send you
Okay.
probably 90% of it.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Or even
All
just
right,
this
all right,
slide
I'll
would
send
be
it to
great.
you. And then the last thing I wanted to do is I gave you a template for a SWOT. And I really want you to think about that. If you don't have that in your business plan, you'll get called on it. So you have to have it in your business plan. And so when you're thinking about your strengths and your weaknesses and your opportunities and threats, in the back of your mind, now also think about how can I take advantage of the strengths and opportunities, and how can I turn the weaknesses and threats into opportunities. Just don't list them. A client the other day gave me 3 years of SWOTs. I looked at them, and they were almost identical. So, well, did you do anything with this stuff? No, they didn't do anything with it. They just wrote it down. Look, we did a SWOT. So you have to do something with it. So think about that too, as you're, what are those threats? What are those threats in the food, right? Another restaurant opening up. McDonald's deciding that they're going to offer healthy foods. You know, what are those threats? Now, they're very likely, but what are the threats? So those are things you need to think about, because you might get asked, and you have to very counter those. And you're going to get a lot of points for those if you're really addressing them first. Again, because you've done your homework. These are just 10 quick questions. I'll just skip those. I think I ran out of time. But I will offer this. So here's my card. I brought plenty. Expecting 30 people. If you want to link in with me, please do. If you have a question or would like to talk to me, please do. I am offering my free time to have a conversation. All right? I've been in your shoes more often than I care to count. And I say I call them dead bodies. I talked about my successes, and in between those successes, there's probably at least 10 failures. But that was that one slide, like I said. You got to step into it and do it, otherwise you'll never know. So I know I threw a lot of information at you. It's, you know, we could probably have spent 3 days or 4 days just getting into a lot of detail. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm offering. You have questions as you're going through your business plan about whether this makes sense or doesn't make sense. I am truly offering that. All you have to do is send me an email or LinkedIn, or touch base through LinkedIn. And I encourage you to, for LinkedIn, I have 5,700 connections. So you connect with me, if you know LinkedIn, you just got access to 5,700 people. So that's a free win for all of you guys if you want to take advantage of it. And I also encourage you to download the podcast. There's a lot of, not because it's mine, but there's a lot of great stuff in there.
Is this your business, the Ponzi Group?
Yes.
Cool, thank you, Angelo.